and a bit more policy oriented, is about one of our latest pieces of research with actually Java, Xiao, who's not today, as co-authors, about a taxonomy for crypto that we have developed. And before your reaction is, oh no, another taxonomy, let me explain why we're doing this one. So the problem that we've identified is that crypto regulation is not designed with some crypto in mind. And a clear example of this is liquid staking. Liquid staking is just not present, is not in the applications of that any regulation has been really looking at until now. They're very interesting assets because they're yield bearing. A similar thing happens with wrapped coins. A representation of one coin in another blockchain is actually quite tricky from a regulatory perspective. In general, this is a problem that we identify for yield-bearing assets don't have a centralized issuer. Yield-bearing assets for liquid staking, with or without a centralized issuer, tokens that are referenced by an asset. And for instance, it's a particular problem in the EU regulation, but feedback that we've gotten from our American colleagues tell us that in the US, there's pretty much the same problem. So this research is going to be impactful there as well. In the EU, we have MiCA, Markets in Crypto Asset Regulation. Actually, this research is part of an initiative called the MiCA Crypto Alliance. And under the MiCA regulation, you have three types of tokens. E-money tokens, basically stable coins, asset reference tokens, which are other tokens with an asset reference that not a single one of them has received a license since the creation of the category, and everything else. But this is a subsidiary regulation. So MiCA is subsidiary to other regulation. MiFID, which is basically the securities regulation, financial instruments regulation. And you have another regulation much less known for financial instruments, the AIFMD, the Alternative Investment Funds Directive, which regulates other collective investment schemes. So this raises the question of how do you classify certain assets under these three regulations, and then there's multiple categories in the EU. So there's a descriptive problem of how you classify them. Then there's also the policy problem of imagine all of these liquid staking assets having to get a license in the EU to be able to operate it. It would probably be pretty destructive for the DeFi ecosystem in the EU. But just checking DeFi Llama earlier today, if you go there to the largest DeFi protocols by TVL, 2 out of the 4, the second one and the fourth, are staking protocols. And you can say, well, what's also the relevance is for the XRP ledger? You have liquid staking on the XRP ledger. You don't have native staking, but there, for instance, Midas has launched Midas XRP, which is a liquid staking solution on there's a reference to XRP.
Lithium.
Yes, on lithium. Such. Yes, the accelerator. You have the GayHub BTC, which is basically a wrap representation of Bitcoin, the XRP ledger. So these questions are really they go across the entire blockchain ecosystem, right? And last year, exchanges, just a few months ago, really, in October, multiple exchanges in a roundtable made a call for academic research to classify these assets. They said we need academics to classify this research, to classify these assets, to produce academic research studying the actual characteristics of the assets, so that then we can suggest a solution to ESMA and actually submit this to ESMA via the ESMA Q&A system. But of course, many of these roundtables calls for action, nobody ever takes the action, and that's what we try to come in and fill. And what this is doing is it's taking our research and applying it to an industry-demanded output. And of course, there's different demands from the industry. Exchanges, maybe they just want clarity. They don't care whether a particular asset falls in the favorable category or not. Maybe in the DeFi ecosystem, there is more of a pressure to have a favorable solution where most of these assets fall under MiCA, the most favorable categories of MiCA, rather than securities regulation. So obviously there's different approaches to this, but the first and foremost point from the industry was we need research. You can also see probably here in this excerpt from the proceedings of this roundtable that you took. So we took it upon ourselves to do that. Started with more or less a computer science-based taxonomy, and then moving on to a legal review. So right now we've already released a working paper, preprint for research, which is public, I'm happy to share. And we're working with some law professors from different parts of the EU to review a legal focus report on top of this paper. This one's not public yet. And we started reviewing existing taxonomies. As I said, many taxonomies to have been done yet, done already, but not with legal variables in mind. And the US and EU legal frameworks. We elaborated case studies, and we built the code. We started looking at the top 100 assets by market cap, and then started adding other assets that were strategic to us, and identified a series of dimensions that are orthogonal to each other, which means it's not a tree of dimensions where under one dimension you have the others, but one dimension, like they are transversal to each other, right? So of course, we looked at things like the standards, the asset function, but most importantly, we've looked at a centralization dimension. So we have a minimum decentralization test based on the literature with 8 different centralization dimensions, which is what you see here in the right side of the screen. So there's basically we use this. We're building an algorithm here, right? An algorithm to determine how centralized, decentralized an asset may be according to those dimensions. The mechanism design. So for instance, who is in charge of minting the asset? Is there an issuer? Is there a DAO or a multi-sig address? Is there no issuer at all because the asset is minted without anybody being in control, not even a decentralized collective? What's the mechanism for minting, right? Does it come from consensus, locking mint, kernel mint, is it wrapping? And where does the yield come from? Does it come from an activity, and which activity is it? Is it lending or is it staking? It's very different. Is it a yield to incentivize? Is that a yield that is at the manager's discretion to distribute? Not, or is it a yield that is incentivizing actions, but not at the manager's discretion? It could be giving governance tokens to those participating in the liquidity pool. What's the distribution mechanism of the profits? You have rebasing, right? Instead, you used to have 100 coins, and now you have 110. You can have value accrual. You can have an actual yield coming in. You can have an external party come in and distribute profits to you. And what's the reference asset? It's the currency. It's the basket of currencies. Is it an asset that is redeemed off-chain, Axos Gold, or is it an asset that's redeemed on-chain, like DAI? And there's more and more sub-dimensions of this, so we can try to map all of this, and started looking at some initial legal dimensions. Although, as I was saying, we're building a second report that does a legal deep dive on this with law professors. Of course, we looked at the Howey test, which is very similar to MiFID, and also the alternative investment funds test, and also looking, this is an important part of it, also from our context with the Austrian Financial Markets Authority that's very interested in this question. Where does the claim, what kind of claim do you have? Do you have a claim against the issuer of a token? Do you have a claim against the reserves? Because if you have a claim against the issuer of the token, or if that's probably putting you in alternative investment funds directed territory. Whereas if you have a claim against reserves, maybe closer to the other way around. If you have a claim against the issuer, you are in MiCA asset reference token territory. If you have a claim against the holders of the reserves, ironically, you are more in alternative investment funds directed territory. So we use all of this to map, first of all, what the characteristics of the tokens are, and try to draw the closest relative of different tokens in financial instruments. Not because we are arguing that the tokens are financial instruments, but we do want to see what they mimic, right? So we see tokens with a centralized document looking like a debt instrument, liquid staking token more like a derivative, a wrap token more like a depository receipt. But then we look at other dimensions, right? For instance, the decentralization, to see if the token could or not fall in one of these categories that they mimic. Actually, we are falling broadly in the field that many of these assets are not financial instruments, even if they have a relative, because of their decentralization or because of another reason. And that's the kind of argument that we explore in the legal part of the research. So you see here one of our decision trees. Basically, it's basically an algorithm, right, that allows us to begin to classify assets. The idea is to be able to provide to the community, to regulators eventually, a tool that has value to classify thousands of tokens. And of course, you always need to do a deep dive. And we're not doing this ourselves. We have set up actually a working group, right? So first, there's our original research, which is what you see now. Then there's a review by law professors. And then there's a working group that we set up with different players from the industry. We have at the moment 6 large exchanges, 5 banks that are in the European crypto world, 5 different universities as well signed up to be in a working group to comment on this. The idea is to come up with a consensus proposal as far as we acknowledge the sensitive topic. And this is part of the preliminary outputs of what you can see. Like you can see TradFi analogs for the assets. As I'm saying, the fact that there's a TradFi analog does not mean that they fall in that category, because yes, maybe decentralized, or that's the legal reason why it did not fall here. But here you will see the classification of many of these assets we'll be looking at. There's some nice charts saying how many of each kind, right? We have found. This is what we mean when we say that the dimensions are orthogonal, meaning you can have the fact that you are in one dimension does not mean you have another value in another dimension. It's not a tree. They are really, it's like an n-dimensional table if you want. Also by market cap, specification. We have done case studies. We have not focused this on liquid staking tokens and wrap coins, by the way. It's a taxonomy of assets. It's just that the taxonomy is designed to sort out problems for decentralized assets, and in particular, we do have an interest in sorting out problems for liquid staking assets, for wrapped assets or similar, right? Whether they call wrapped or not. But the taxonomy does cover everything. That's why, for instance, you see on screen a case study for XRP, which is a paper. So I'm saying it's public and you can find it online. And the next steps, that's cannot see much here. The screen is a bit small, but there's a paper on the left. We're going to continue iterating on this version of the paper, which is a working paper. It's available online. But we're also working on this legal, so this is a paper, but we're also working on this legal report, which is being reviewed at the moment by different law professors, getting very interesting feedback. And that would be it. I think I managed to constrain it to my slots. I'm happy to take questions. Or, Joe, I don't know, anything you'd like to add?